I'm back and it's episode 3. So, welcome back to the Deep Topics podcast with Shaun. I'm your host, Shaun, and I'm so glad and grateful that you've joined me here today. This is episode 3 of season 2 of the podcast. And in today's episode, I thought I was going to talk about my horror experience at Unilever, but I think I might stick more true to what the podcast summary is saying and to tell you more about an insight or reflection that I've had over the past week. If you like this podcast and you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe on YouTube or subscribe on Spotify, whichever platform you're watching or listening to this podcast on. And I'd also appreciate it if you checked out my TikTok, where I post regularly, and these are videos about my life, whether with regards to spiritual lifestyle or financial freedom and income or food, vegetarian food and food reviews, or just general thoughts and feelings around what's going on my day to day. In addition to that, you can purchase any of the art that I create while on my travels, while on my journeys, and the link is also linked down below. And if you want to support my journey, if you want to share some support, I have a PayPal link in the description as well. So I think I'll start off today's episode by talking about, just generally in my life where I am. And currently I'm in the space where I'm thinking about, it's my Cape Town summer and it's December in Cape Town. And there's this pressure on me to get a high enough income and to repay that student debt. And if you didn't already know, I'd received a summons from the University of Cape Town's lawyers with regards to outstanding debt owing to the university. And that summons, I received it sometime in October, um, kind of suggesting that they were on the verge of doing some type of default judgment, and who knows what that leads to. Now, being in a space where you already know that I've taken that job at McDonald's, my income is not really high enough to even be paying the rent that I'm paying currently. So to now suggest that, I need to be paying around 125,000 Rand worth of university debt, that's a bit of a challenge for me. So I'm facing that overall pressure of like, well, some of the opportunities have not gone the way I thought they would. And I'm really a bit anxious about like what's going to happen. Is something going to happen? Is something going to come through? And I'm thinking about that at the moment. Like, what's going to come through? I'm sitting here with trust and patience and hope and optimism and not really knowing like where will that lead. But I know what I can do on a daily basis, and what I can do is to continue to work on my growing audience on my TikTok platform and to share my life, which is what I've chosen to do when I started to see that the audience was resonating with where I am and what I'm sharing. And I can continue to record my weekly podcast where I share insights and reflections on thriving in uncertainty, which is also what I'm doing um, by sharing my learnings from the week. So I thought, it's challenging to wake up for a bunch of reasons that I've just told you about. In addition to me sometimes walking past the bathroom and there's a weird smell there, and then not knowing if there's going to be hot water in that shower today. So there are just so many reasons to not wake up, and I have to every day fight those reasons and continue to wake up day after day, to persevere and to push through and to do what I can and to ensure that I end the day different to how it began, which is me not wanting to wake up. So I, do the what I need to do, and I'm walking on the road, and I come across these Princeton security officers, and this man is restrained on the ground in handcuffs. And the first thing I see is that one of the security guards is kicking the man. And I think to myself, I previously, a couple of weeks ago, experienced threats, intimidation, and harassment from the private security officers on the public roads. Not the very same ones, but the very same company. And I called the control center 3 times. I didn't get a response. And then I sent an email, got a response. Then I went to meet the directors and the operations manager from the directors of UKIT and the operations manager from the Princeton Security. And we had a very long meeting about where I spoke about all of these things. And I spoke about things that can be done to treat people with more compassion, humanness, and respect. Somebody on one of those TikToks asked me, well, what does this lead to? I said, I trust and I hope that they're putting those plans and strategies into place that they themselves said they gave me their word that they would do so. So when I come across the site on the road and I see that there's like injustice and cruelty being practiced towards a civilian, at that point I don't really know any of the context and don't really think that any of the context is reasonable because that aspect is not part of any security guard's job. So I take my phone out and I start to record because I start to see that this is part of oversight and accountability. As a civilian, if I need to bring light to injustice, I must do that. And so I did that. And I confront them, like, have some respect for that man. And this lady is shouting from her house, uh, giving me an indication that she had some experience with this person and she called the security guard to take care of it. So now the homeless guy or whoever he is restrained on the ground in handcuffs, and he's not going anywhere. So when he's being kicked, it's an act of aggression. It's an act of aggression. It's not an act of defense on the part of security. It's not an act of restraint on the part of security because he's already restrained on the ground. He's like face down. What more restraint can a person be asking for? So I confront them and they tell me to get out of here, go, be on my way, move on, and those types of things. They're trying to suggest that they have dominion over the space and I'm on their territory. And I already saw this before that, like, what what delusional mindset are these people operating under, whereby they think that it's their job to have power, superiority, and control. It's now entering like delusional territory. And in addition to anybody that knows anything about psychology knows that Stanford prison experiment whereby two people, random people, not in any positions of power, having any authority or control, adopting a uniform of one or the other makes them also unconsciously adopt a power dynamic and unconsciously adopt a bias and unconsciously also adopt powers and responsibilities that were not really insinuated by that uniform, but what they believe that uniform to represent. And that's what I saw playing out today. That those security guards think that they're something more than what they actually are. And they think that their job involves aggression, intimidation, abuses of power, when it actually doesn't. It actually doesn't. And nobody has been confronting them and straightening out this for them. Nobody has been really putting them in line. Where is the person to put them in line and to say, it's not your job to inflict harm upon these people? Like, you're not really guarding, providing safety. You're not really doing that if you're harming even the suspect. The suspect does not need to be harmed, does not need to face your anger, your fury. Why do you even have anger and fury? You're not at all personally invested in this. Why do you have that? Because you think you're better than them and you think you're doing justice. But justice is not part of your job. Justice is part of the law and the law enforcement, and that's not who you are. So I made sure to have that. I feel like it is what an injustice it would be if I saw that and didn't say anything. What a piece of shit I would be if I saw that and didn't say anything. And that's why I think that it's part of my responsibility as a human functioning in society to use my voice, to raise my voice when I see things that I need to bring attention to. And that's what I did. So, as usual, having those types of conversations, it can leave a person who's not used to having those types of conversations a bit shaken, especially when there's a need to like muster up strength, muster up power, and to really gather a mindset of being a responsible civilian and taking it upon oneself to say what needs to be said in that regard. So after doing that and having that type of experience, one thing that came up was that, it's time to move on and it's time to move on, but knowing that I'm going to do something about it. So having that footage that was recorded was very important to me because that footage allowed me to say that, you know what, Princeton, the first time I escalated it to you 3 times to your control room when I was involved personally and nobody responded. Somebody wanted to ignore that you should be held to standards and you should have oversight, and somebody should be holding you responsible and accountable to not just be doing anything you think you should be doing. You should not be hurting people. You should not be aggressive. It's not even necessary to be aggressive. It might be necessary to practice force only when removing someone from the private property, but when that person's face down, restrained in handcuffs on the ground with their hand behind their back, and you're practicing aggression, now you're entering inhumane and cruel territory. So when I got on my way and I went to have breakfast, and then I was editing that video, and I knew that at that point, I'm going to put this on TikTok because I need to bring it to the public attention now. Step one was when I was involved personally, and I always give 3 chances and choose to believe the best in others. My first chance was not saying anything when on the 14th of November when I was confronted, harassed, intimidated, and threatened. While my shoe had broken, I was crouching on the ground trying to fix it, walking on my way home after buying noodles from the Rage Cafe and convenience store. The second instance, when I was then confronted, harassed, threatened outside Astron Energy and followed home. Okay. The third instance, when I called the control center to report that. Instance 4 and 5, when I called again and they said management will contact you, but then no management was contacting me, nobody was doing anything. Instance 6 of me sending the email, finally getting a response, and then that leading to a discussion with the UK directors and the Princeton security. Now we had instance 7. No, instance 7 was me seeing the security guards profile and record a homeless man while he was walking on the street after stopping him. Instance 8 Instance 8 is me now noticing that these security guards are kicking the restrained man on the ground, and when I asked them about it, they have their reasons. Their reasons were he broke into that woman's house and he was trying to run away. Okay, he broke into that woman's house. You now restrained him on the ground and you call law enforcement. What part of kicking him is the adequate response to waiting? Because now we are in the territory of waiting, right? We're waiting for the law enforcement to come by. What part of kicking him, harassing him, making him feel like shit is part of your training there? He was trying to run away. No, he wasn't trying to run away. He was face down on the ground in handcuffs with his hand behind the back. So I made that TikTok and I posted it. And I think it's now necessary for any civilian, when you see injustice, that you must say something. And they often have like whistleblower hotlines to do that. They also have like report my driving. They have whistleblower hotlines. We know as a human society that sometimes humans do cruel and fucked up weird things. And that if there's no oversight and accountability, like a camera, then people can be really stepping out of the boundaries, really like practicing the greatest extent of discretion as to what it really means to do that job. From what I'm seeing, their their training is too vague and ambiguous. Their training is too vague and ambiguous, and that's why they're bringing superiority, pridefulness, excessive force, maybe even deadly force. Sometimes, I'm sure you've seen with the George Floyd situation, that law enforcement can practice deadly force. These are not even law enforcement, they're private security. Law enforcement or uniform wearing individuals can sometimes practice deadly force in the conduct of their job unnecessarily, not even feeling threatened, just because of that delusion of power that often comes up with humans expressing power over other humans. So that incident basically dominated the last hour or two of my day today. And having that dominate the last hour or two of my day today, it's, well, I must say, after having my breakfast, because I chose to go to chose to go to Palmyra Junction Woolworths Cafe, because I don't want to go to Cavendish Square Woolworths Cafe anymore, because I feel taken for granted, and I feel like some of the newer staff members, particularly the managers, they really don't, based on their interaction with me, value me, especially also they value me less after I applied for jobs at that cafe. I see it in the way they interacted with me. So I'm not going there anymore. I'm going to Palmyra Junction. I'm trying something new. And then I see the manager, the previous manager from the Woolworths Cafe, who worked at Cavendish Square, and she, like, we make eye contact, and then she allows me to like eat my food in peace, and then she comes to say hi. And there's an immediate smile there from me, because I now see that I'm valued as a person. My humanness is recognized here. This woman doesn't know me. I don't know her. She's a manager here. It's part of our transaction that I eat, and then I say some few words, and she says some few words, and then I be on my way. But when a particular individual in a restaurant shares that type of experience where they make you feel valued and appreciated as a customer, that for me is something that makes somebody's day. And when it does make somebody's day, then it allows me to have that type of mindset of like, okay, this is the type of place where I want to continue to go, and want to continue to spend my money there. As someone who's valued in that specific environment, I want to spend my money there. I want to get more of that being seen, being valued, because I'm a human. I'm a human, and those little interactions mean something. And when those little interactions are unsavory, they also mean something. And now you can kind of get a glimpse as to why the social justice aspect is starting to become broader, because in the past two episodes I've been talking about making a positive and meaningful impact in the lives of others. I saw that through the TikTok platform, and now I see it that the positive and meaningful impact does not necessarily only have to be made through the reach and awareness of millions or of people online, that it can also be made through a face-to-face interaction or some type of small daily interaction with an individual, which might otherwise be taken for granted. But I think we all know, in those small daily interactions that we have on a daily basis, that sometimes those daily interactions are so significant that we might remember them for weeks, days, months, even years to come. And if they are negative, then it might even shift the balance or the trajectory of our entire day. So there's becoming a greater awareness of the impact in the lives of others, and to recognize that all of the humans are worthy of existing. They're all worthy of existing, and they're all worthy of being here. And in Cape Town, one of the things that you see in Cape Town is that there's this attitude that some of the humans are not worthy of being here. And some of the humans are not even worthy of existing, even in their freedom of expression, even in their personal freedom of walking on a public road, that they're looked at as somebody that should not be there, and they're treated by people as not worthy of being part of the society, even though they have made a conscious and intentional decision, some if not most of them, to actually stay out of the of the society because they deem it to be necessary for the expression of their personal freedom. So that is not something that personally I choose to judge, especially because in 2023, when I was living in my Claremont Dream apartment, one of the things that I recognized there was that there was this like homeless guy who I would see often. And, I was drawing the Claremont Civic Center one Saturday after, like morning, and he came to sit next to me because he wanted some food or something that I was eating. And I, I offered him that thing. I continued to draw what my drawing was. And then late in the afternoon, he came to sit next to me and he was watching me draw. And then I was starting to learn more from someone. I never took the opportunity to get to know someone who had chosen to be outside of society, except when I lived in Delft and there was a 16-year-old boy there who I would buy food for sometimes. So now I was giving myself the opportunity to try to get to know the story of this person and to see, like, what I think about them, is that the same or different to what they think about themselves. And I learned that there's a choice there on some of these individuals to not integrate into society because they deem the societal norms and standards to be undesirable for the expression of their living. And because of that, I now know that it helps bring it in a more cohesive nature, that regardless of a person's socioeconomic status, they're still a human and they still have basic rights. Even if they are being considered a suspect, they still do have basic rights. But at the same time, if they're interacting with someone who does not believe that they have basic rights, and if they themselves do not know that they have basic rights to be treated with humane behavior, that those basic rights will not be applied in that situation. And that's what I've been seeing walking around Cape Town, seeing how the homeless are treated by some of these people, seeing how the wealthy are not scared at the behavior of the homeless. They're scared at the sight of the homeless. That there's something about the sight of a dirty brown person that scares a wealthy person, from what I've seen in Kenilworth. And there's something also about a brown person in general that scares these people. It's actually honestly disgusting. It's disgusting behavior that they still have pridefulness and superiority in 2024. Like, aren't they socialized with that the white superiority was never a thing in the first place? It was all a grand delusion. And so when I see that type of injustice happen, it's not something I'm going to let go. I'm not going to let it go. And bad things happen when good men choose to do nothing. Is that what they say? Bad things happen when good men choose to do nothing. And honestly, many people are sheep and many people are not doing anything. They continue to watch the sad, the unjust, the inhumane, the cruel things happen, and they don't stand up. They don't have a backbone. They don't have a spine. They don't have values. They don't have morals. They don't have standards. They don't have integrity. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like those people that don't say anything, don't do anything. They're just passively going throughout life, not thinking anything, not doing anything, just being a drone. From the personal journey that I've been going through, the spiritual journey, where there's a greater awareness of something collective going on here, of like this underlying entity expressing itself manifold, infinitely, simultaneously through all of the living things. Personally, I think that it becomes more and more challenging to ignore some of these things, especially seeing them going on. And it's not necessary to ignore these things anymore. It's now necessary to take a stand for what is right, to have values, to have beliefs, to have a backbone, to have a spine, and to not see bad, weird, or cruel things and not say anything. Because if everybody's doing that, then those types of atrocities just continue over and over and over again, and people get hurt over and over and over again. People get hurt when nobody is watching, especially in positions of power. When I worked at McDonald's, one thing that was prevalent there was that there were cameras everywhere. And at first you wonder, like, is this because they don't trust people? And then you start to realize, no, that people are prone to doing weird things. And that those cameras are not because you're not trusted. Those cameras are to ensure that you are kept in line. You are kept in line, that you do not do weird things. And so I think personally that when I spoke to Jared from Princeton and I spoke to those UKIT directors, that when they spoke about on body cameras, dash cam, and other CCTV footage, that I'm now more than ever seeing that it is necessary. It is very, very necessary. It is very necessary to be having the oversight and the accountability in real time, because these men are prone to harming people. They are prone to harming people, and something needs to be done about it urgently. When I left that situation and I told them this has happened to me as well, one of those guards was saying, "Oh, that was you." Yes, it was me. And I'm not going to walk around like nothing happened, letting you hurt people. I'm not going to let you hurt people. I might be a nobody, a general civilian, but I have a voice, and my voice has power, and I'm a resident of that community, and that has impact. So, in summary, I think that having the intention to do this particular episode with talking about the horrors of my Unilever experience, and then coming across the situation of seeing injustice number 9 at the hands of the Princeton security, has made it so that talking about this becomes relevant and at the forefront of what I need to discuss in this week's episode. And I think that saying what was said and taking that footage and expressing that footage and sharing that story is very much necessary to ensure that in the meantime, while these individuals get the CCTV on body camera footage training, whatever they said they're going to do, that if as a civilian I have access to a camera and I notice an injustice, an act of cruelty, an act of the violation of the rights of someone, and that I can take that footage and share it with people that can do something about it, then that's something that I need to do. That's something that I need to do. And that to me is doing my human duty. Doing my human duty to have a spine. You know what? I want to say this, if anybody is watching or listening, that for a very long time, I was, you know, the story already. You know that because of my upbringing in Greytown, that I was smart and exceptional, but I was poor. And I was known to live in an area of town that was dirty and poor. And in in my mindset, I didn't see myself that way. I knew about the context and the factors around it, but I did not see myself as poor, but I realize now that others did see me that way. And that's why they were even more surprised at my academic excellence. They were kind of could not grasp how I was doing that. But I knew that I had the motivation, the encouragement, and the support of the community, of some of my family members, of teachers, and so on. Everybody was rooting for me. And then when I went to high school, I was really bullied, harassed, often threatened, my physical safety threatened, bullied, made to feel like shit, like the lowest of the low, ridiculed for my authentic self-expression. There's not one day of that whole 5 year experience that I think I felt good about myself or felt safe to even go into that environment. And I know what it's like to be treated that way. And so I also know what it's like in university to also be treated that way. Repeat of that part too. Like it was the Indian boys who did that when I was in high school, and then it was also in university being shunned, like socially outcasted by the Indian boys, essentially telling me I'm not one of them. I know what it's like to be rejected in that way. I also know what it's like throughout most of my life to see injustice and to not say anything about it, because I grew up in a family where injustice is so normal. You're being beaten every day. You're somebody hitting somebody else. Somebody swearing somebody else. It's normal to not have respect for anyone. It's normal to not respect anyone. It's normal to just not have any basic decency, essentially. So when I see that type of thing, having been that type of person that doesn't say anything about it because growing up believing that it was normal, then wondering like, maybe I don't want to say anything about it because what if I become that target? Then realizing that, oh no, knowing what that's like and then allowing another person to experience that is not just terrible, it's bad and it's cruel, and it's like you become the worst version of yourself if you see that type of thing happening and not saying anything about it. So with the greater collective awareness of what the overall dynamic is, and recognizing that when those types of things are noticed, they need someone to stand up for it and to say something. It makes me think about things differently now. It brings into perspective some type of collective interaction where I'm not just me alone here by myself interacting and sometimes crossing your path. It's me looking like I'm alone, interacting seemingly like I'm alone, but actually you're there and you see me, and I know you're there and you know I'm here. So if I see something weird happening to you, I must say something about it. I must do something about it. Or what really am I? Who am I if I don't say something about it or do something? Do I want to be that type of person? I don't. I don't want to be that type of person that watches injustice and atrocities happen and just let it go by. Just let it go by and not say anything about it and not do anything about it. Like they, in that instance when they were telling me, they were trying to have a rebuttal for why they were kicking that man while he was down in handcuffs, and they were saying he broke into that lady's house and all of those things. He was trying to run away, but at the same time I think to myself, justice is not part of your mandate. Punishment is not part of your mandate. Justice and punishment are not part of your mandate. They are part of the mandate of the law enforcement, of the legal system, of the judicial system. They are part of that mandate. And so you expressing that type of behavior is really showing an overreach. It's showing a violation of boundaries. It's showing an overreach. It's showing an abuse of power that if somebody continues to watch that and walk by, then to me, that person is doing an injustice by not saying anything. So I don't think that, eye for an eye is a way of going about things. You know, I think that eye for an eye kind of ignores that we have a judicial system set up in our society. We have laws set up in society to handle these types of things. We do not take these types of things into our own hands, because it is seen time and time again that when people do take things into their own hands, they stop acting rationally. They start violating all sorts of rights and boundaries, and they start doing the most weird and strange things. So, hopefully, my message can bring light to this situation, that people in uniforms need to have oversight, and they need to have accountability in real time to avoid the abuses of power, to avoid the overreach, to avoid the violation of boundaries, to avoid the violation of basic decency and human rights. Something needs to be said about this. I'll save the Unilever horror story for next week's episode because people have been reaching out to me. What I've noticed is that people are watching. Here's a theme. Here's an interesting theme is that people are always watching. And I noticed this on the social media. People don't comment on my LinkedIn, and I've been sharing my life journey, short clips from the Deep Topics podcast, and I've been sharing like this is what I'm going through. I have so much experience working at McDonald's. Um, this is the tragedy that I experienced at the hands of this business, at the hands of this family member, whatever, whatever. Very rarely do people comment, very rarely do they share what they think, but I recognize it's been years and years and years, and people are watching. They're watching and they're thinking things about it, and they don't share how they really feel. They might be feeling a certain way, they might want to really tell me, but especially on that platform that's considered professional, they're not sharing what they think. Maybe they're concerned about what their colleagues might see. Spineless behavior. So sometimes, if a person's reaching out to me to share their gratitude and appreciation for, my authentic journey, I wonder throughout that entire time you didn't say anything. How can I respond to what you're saying now? I just cannot. But the theme of what I'm sharing right now that people are watching, it's a broader societal factor that people are always watching. And that lady who had reported that man who broke into a house, but supposedly broke into a house and then was on the ground in handcuffs, and she was angry that I was confronting the security guards. She was angry. She was enjoying that man's punishment. Why, firstly, were the security guards punishing the man? Is punishment part of their mandate? No. Why were they practicing aggression on a man who's already incapacitated? Is that part of their mandate? No. Because of that lady's experience, which I don't doubt was highly traumatic, does that make it necessary to enjoy this man's punishment at the hands of the security guards? Are you enjoying his suffering? Why are you enjoying his suffering, lady, while you sit in your safe house? Are the guards enjoying the man's punishment? Why are they enjoying the punishment? Why do they feel that it's righteous for them to attack him while he's down? Some fucked up and demonic things were going on there. It now feels, when I think about it, it feels like it was a festering ball of demonic activity that started with some poor man looking for food, likely, possibly, getting caught, and then it becoming an attack and revoking of his basic humanity and human rights, and an enjoyment of his suffering, and a bestowing upon punishment on him, not by the law enforcement or by the legal system, but by private security. And this lady watching and wanting somebody to not say anything, to not interrupt, because in their opinion, there's a right reason that makes what they're doing good. Snap out of it. Snap out of it. If the wealthy continue to live in an environment where they only talk to each other and they only see each other with the same color skin, and they only talk to the same socioeconomic group, and they avoid at all costs anybody with brown skin, anybody that looks like they don't have a home, anybody that's dirty. If the sight of someone like that disgusts them, if the sight of someone like that threatens them, not the behavior but the sight, then it really makes me sad for what elite society we have created, where the lowest of the low of society can be thrown aside and have and be looked at as not deserving, not just of not being in the city that their ancestors literally founded, were and grew up on, but they don't deserve rights, they don't deserve basic rights. That, for me, that doesn't make sense, and it should never make sense. Nobody's basic rights should be taken away for anything, even if they are considered to be suspect in some type of crime. And I recognize now that if nobody's watching, then those basic rights will be ignored. And that, I think, is a very much can be a conclusion for this week's episode, that the need for that oversight and accountability is very necessary. Very, very necessary. Yeah. I think I'm going to leave it there for this week's episode. If I said anything that you find helpful, valuable, impactful, meaningful, let me know down below in the comments. If you agreed with anything that I've shared or you disagreed, let me know as well. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to see more, then feel free to subscribe on the platform that you're watching or listening to this on, whether that's YouTube or Spotify. And perhaps next week I'll be back with sharing that story that I intended to share in this episode but didn't get to it. And hopefully nothing takes that moment, because there's definitely a lot from that story that needs to be shared. Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more of Deep Topics with Shaun, then feel free to subscribe on the platform that you're watching or listening to this on, whether that's YouTube or Spotify. Leave a like on this video and let others know whether that you found it helpful. And also leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. Take courage to share your view. Do you disagree? Do you disagree? Have you experienced something like this similarly? And or do you have a story that you want to share? Let me know down below. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this episode. Thanks so much for listening. And something here is trying to, what's this? Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next time. And perhaps I'll be sharing my Unilever horror story in episode 4, which, by the way, it's not the only one. So maybe 4, 5, and 6 will be letting you know about gross injustice experienced at corporate spaces. Never make weird and cruel and fucked up things normal for you. Let's leave it there. Thanks so much for listening. I wish you a wonderful week. Take care and goodbye. This is Shaun. Bye, everyone.